Hello everyone, my name is Ming. Welcome to another video. And in this video, I'm going to talk about my photography journey, how I started it, and the road so far. What inspired me to do this video is recently I got an email from Shoutout, who I collaborated with a while ago to host a photography competition. And recently they sent me a list of questions, 7 questions. And most of those questions are related to my photography journey. So I think it might be good to share the answers with you, and hopefully it could help some of you guys to start photography. All right, without further ado, let's jump into the video. Question number 1. Every journey has the beginning. So how and when did you start your adventure with photography? What were your first steps? I started photography in 2015. I still remember on January the 2nd in 2015, I bought my first camera in my life. I bought a Nikon D3200, a entry-level DSLR, and I spent $500 on the camera body and then 2 kit lenses. The first is 18 to 55 and then 55 to 200. I bought the kit for $500. That was a big investment for me at that point. I was still a student at that time, and I was writing a personal blog, and I wanted to have some nice photos for my blog. I thought if I had a DSLR camera, then I could take better photos for my blog. But what's interesting is actually not long after I bought the camera, I actually stopped writing for my blog. I closed my blog because I found I couldn't consistently contribute to my blog. Maybe 2 posts in a year and then nobody reads it. So why to write a blog? So I just closed it. But I found my passion for photography started to grow since then. I just, took out my camera and then used the kit lenses and I just shoot everything. And in order to learn photography, I bought a couple of books. I remember one book I bought was from Kelby One. Scott Kelby, the photographer who founded Kelby One as a photography education company. And they have a lot of books to teach you photography. I bought a book to teach beginners what are the camera settings you want to use for different genres of photography. And it goes through almost every genre, like sports photography, portrait photography, landscape photography. And obviously it doesn't go very deep because the book is designed for beginners, and it just basically cover all genres and to get you started. And I bought another book for post-processing in Photoshop, also from Kelby One. And mostly it goes through how you can do all the adjustments and how to use the tools in Camera Raw inside Photoshop, and then finish the photo in Photoshop, save it as a JPEG, things like those. So when I started the photography, I didn't use Lightroom, and I just opened raw files in Photoshop in Camera Raw, and then save those as JPEGs, and then that's good enough for me. And then about 1 year later, I started to learn Lightroom, and then maybe about 1 year after that, when I switched to Fujifilm, I switched to Capture One. Another thing I found helpful when I started photography is the internet and YouTube in particular. I found YouTube is a great resource to find free tutorials. There are tons of free tutorials on YouTube that you can watch. Speaking of free tutorials, by the way, if you are watching this on my YouTube channel, please consider subscribing if you are not already, because I also post photography tutorials from time to time. Please subscribe. So yeah, that's pretty much how I started photography. You definitely don't need expensive gear to start photography, but you want to learn as much as you can and practice as much as you can. They are equally important. Question number 2. Did you know from the moment you've taken your first picture what kind of photography you like best and is right for you? What do you like to capture the most and why? What inspires you the most? The first photo I took with my Nikon D3200 was probably a pine tree photo with snow in the winter season in my grandparents' backyard. And when I took that photo, I definitely didn't know what kind of photography I would like the best. So I would say when you start photography, just keep shooting, keep trying, try out all kinds of photography, all genres of photography until you find something that particularly interests you. You know, one day you will suddenly realize, oh, I would like to shoot more portraits. I would like to shoot more landscape photos, maybe sports, you know, and then at that point you could dive deeper into that particular category. For me, it is landscape photography. I think it changed how I feel about the world, how I feel about nature. Before I started landscape photography, I had never seen a sunrise. I know it might sound crazy to some of you guys, but I just couldn't get up there early to see a sunrise, or I wasn't interested enough to get up early to see a sunrise. But after I started the landscape photography, one day I got up, I went out, and I shot the sunrise, and it totally blew up my mind. It just changed me because it gave me new perspective. It gave me new experience that I had never got it before. You know, when I'm out shooting landscape photography, I feel so little I am. I feel so great that nature is. And I think that is a fantastic experience. And also for my personality, I think I am a little bit introverted and I am a little bit afraid of socializing and then networking with people. So landscape photography allows me to spend the time only with myself and the nature. I feel I'm connected with the nature. I don't need to talk to anyone else. There's no socializing, no networking. I can focus 100% on the job, on the photography, on myself and the nature. I think that's a great experience that I have never got before. Question 3. What's your most memorable and the most exciting experience related to photography that helped you in understanding what photography is to you? When I saw this question, the first thing that crossed my mind is this photo. I captured this photo in the summer of 2015. It's about 6 months since I started photography, and it is one of my early photos that I still like today. And every time when I look at this photo, it reminds me of the story behind it, what happened on that morning and how I felt on that morning. The lighting on that morning was just incredible. It's beautiful. And every time when I look at it, and it feels like I can almost relive that particular moment. I think that's why people love photography, because we can capture those precious moments and then we can relive those moments later. And that particular moment inspired me to continue landscape photography, to explore, to adventure. And landscape photography to me is a channel that I can get connected with nature, with my with the environment. And landscape photography is a tool that inspires me to explore new adventures, to explore the unknown. And also landscape photography let me experience peace, because when I'm out there shooting, I can forget everything else. I'm so focused on photography itself and the nature, you know, it calms me down, which is very nice. I really enjoyed that experience. It gives me peace of mind, although hiking in the dark sometimes can be a little bit scary. Question number 4. Can you remember any moment or moments when you noticed the biggest change/improvement in your photos? What helped you with that? I think when I compare my recent photos to the photos I took like 5 years ago, 3 years ago, that's when I realized my improvements. I see my improvements in composition over time. I see my improvements in post-processing over time. What helped me with that is learning, practicing, and getting honest feedback. Learning is important because learning is input. Learning teaches you what techniques are available to you that you can use on location or in post-processing to achieve your vision. And it's also important to learn from other people, like see other people's work, see their photos, and what do you like about those photos, and what are the techniques they used to produce that photo. And the next step is practice. Once you learn all those techniques, you learn how other people produced their work, and then you go out, you practice yourself, and practice makes you master those techniques. And third, getting honest feedback. I think it is also important because we, as photographers, we put so much efforts into making the photograph. We get up that early, we go out, hike a couple miles in order to get the photograph. We have that emotional binding to our photos. That makes us automatically think our photos are better than they actually are. That's why getting honest feedback is important, because that way you can know which area needs to be improved next. And then you go back to the first step, learning. Learn how to improve those areas, and then practice, and then getting honest feedback again. I think it's a loop. Learning, practicing, and getting honest feedback. Learning, practicing, and getting honest feedback. I think that's how you can improve your photography. And speaking of getting honest feedback, trust me, don't ask your mom. Your mom will always say your photos are the best. Question number 5. Is there any advice or maybe a tool or a technique that worked for you that helped you to track your progress and to keep on going forward in your photography journey? I would say look back at your earlier photos. Compare your recent photos to the photos you took 5 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, and see if there is an improvement in any area. I think that way you can track your progress. And also, I think you can compare your photos to photos of photographers that you admire. And that way you can track how close you are to where you want to achieve. Question number 6. They say that you can't grow without being challenged or without challenging yourself. So, what is the most challenging part of photography for you, and how do you challenge yourself? I think the most challenging part of landscape photography is there is so little under our control. You can't control weather, you can't control sky, you can't control clouds. You can't even fully control where you can set up your tripod. For example, you can't just set up your tripod in the middle of a lake, right? The conditions are so limited, but you have to work with whatever conditions you have. So if I have a vision for a photo and I go out the first time, I didn't get the photo I wanted, I challenge myself to continue to go out to the same location again and again until I have the right conditions to get the photo I wanted. Sometimes I challenge myself to not to photograph the most obvious option. For example, last month in October, I went to Rocky Mountain National Park. And in Rocky Mountain National Park, photographing the mountains is definitely the most obvious option. But that day, it was snowy day. And due to the weather, I couldn't see the mountains at all. I couldn't photograph the mountains at all. So I decided to challenge myself to find something smaller, to find some other subjects to photograph, to train my eyes to recognize those smaller but also interesting subjects. Sometimes when we go to a famous location, we always shoot the most obvious option, which is not wrong. I mean, just feel free to do it if you can. But as a photography practice, sometimes, challenges like those, do not shoot the most obvious thing, can help you train your eyes, identify other objects. Question number 7. If you could turn back time and restart your journey, what would you do differently? Think of it as advice from yourself now to your younger self. Overall, I'm happy about my photography journey so far, so I don't think I would go back and dramatically change what I did. One advice I might give my younger self is to invest in good quality lenses and lighter gear. When I started photography, especially when I upgraded to my first full-frame DSLR Nikon D750, I bought a couple third-party cheap 2.8 lenses. And eventually I replaced all those lenses because due to the f2.8 aperture, they're bulky, they're heavy, but they're not that good in terms of optical performance. Those are old third-party lenses. I'm sure nowadays third-party lenses are very good as well. But at that point, those lenses I bought, I wasn't very happy about the optical performance. So I guess know what you need. For landscape photography, you don't always need f2.8. You want depth of field, and you want light gear to hike with. Carrying a heavyweight backpack is something I don't enjoy. So I would say consider f4 lenses instead, or APS-C gear. I think it would be a better choice for landscape photography. I think that's the balancing point between optical performance and size and weight. So if I had the chance to start over, I probably would invest in good quality lenses that balance optical performance and size and weight. Bonus question: whose photography journey story would you love to read, watch next? Name a photographer that inspires you that we should ask for an interview next. I'm gonna leave that bonus question to you guys, and leave a comment below. Let me know whose story you want to hear next, and I'm gonna give the feedback to the people as shout out and let them chase the photographer. Alright guys, that's the video. If you are new to my channel, please consider subscribing, and also please consider supporting my channel by purchasing a limited fine art print from my store. Check out more information in the description below. Alright guys, enjoy photography. Bye for now.